we'll jump into my content. So this session we'll be speaking about, we'll be taking a look under the hood of the Aussie program as just a way of illustrating also our philosophy around customer experience. So hopefully some of you have managed to get to Liz and Em's presentation this morning. So I've only got half an hour, so I will just jump into it. So what I hope to be sharing with you, or have shared with you by the end of this, is starting with just our framework for thinking about customer experience, just as a way of showing you how we thought about and then designed the solution for Aussie, and there will be a few outtakes from there. And then lastly, hoping to leave you with some key takeouts that you just may find useful. So getting straight into it then, one of the biggest, I guess, myths that we hear about in the area of customer experience is that it's all about listening to the customer. And that's obviously a lot, the bulk of our CX related briefs as well is all in the area of listening. Can you help us refresh our VOC program, refine it, do a foundational piece, all around the area of listening. But being an outcomes driven agency, and I'm sure many of you in this room will agree, that research, trackers, foundational pieces are just a foundational part of a much broader set of actions that you have to take to actually affect change. They're really important parts. It's really, really critical. It gives you confidence and certainty going forward. Once you have the research, though, that's really then when the rubber hits the road. And it's really important for the people who are designing your insights program or your insights foundational piece to appreciate what that road ahead might look like, because there's lots that we can do upstream in the research design and the solution design to actually ensure that when you receive everything, that you are as set up for success as possible and that you can hit the ground running with action as fast as possible as well. So the way we see it, understanding what customers or the market wants is half of the story. And understanding then what we do as the organization, how we create the current experience, and therefore what levers we need to pull is really the other half. And if you don't have both bits, you don't have the whole picture, and it's not as quick to then get into implementation and change. So 4 key questions to achieving meaningful CX outcomes. Quite simply, at the highest level, we need to understand what customers want. We need to understand what we currently do. We need to work out the gaps between what they want and what we do, and there will be several. Then we need to work out what our plan is to bridge this difference. So which gaps are we going to address, or which gap? It's normally, you can't do everything. It's normally either a handful or maybe just 1 or 2 areas, and then making a plan or a roadmap to actually bridging this difference. And then how will we stick to the plan? So how do we create the conditions that are necessary for accountability to remain? As we all know, strategic objectives and roadmaps can change anytime for a variety of reasons, and so they should. But it's about just making sure that we have the culture and the environment for those conversations to be had in a transparent way. So we distill that into 3 phases called discover, define, and execute. And this framework is really how we conceptualize and tackle CX questions when they come into the business. So under discover, as I mentioned, you've got the customer discovery, and this is squarely where research really lives. So, a variety of research objectives can sit inside this bucket. We're trying, in Aussie's case, to understand drivers of behaviour, but, that can be adapted to your category. It can be drivers of NPS, drivers of repurchase, drivers of likelihood to come again, to buy more. Whatever behaviour or outcome that we want from our customers, we need to design a piece that really links to those actual outcomes. Needs and expectations could be benchmarking your current state experience versus your competitors, but all the research that we need to do lives inside there. And then we've got the flip side in the organizational discovery. Once we have a clear map of what customers want, understanding the people, processes, policies, systems that interact underneath all of these moments of truth to actually create the customer experience. Then we've got our define phase, which is where we're prioritizing what it is that we're going to tackle versus park for the moment. And then we have our execute phase, which there's 5 pillars that sit under this one. And in execute, there's a combination of pillars, I suppose, that create the environment that we want to actually embed customer centricity. So you've got aspects in here that link to communications, buy-in, alignment, just getting everybody on board, and things like vision and culture really speak to that. Then you've got a few of the more structural things. So, roadmap, do we have a clear portfolio of initiatives and sequencing, a plan that is clear and shared and accountability is assigned and has the right governance around it to ensure that somebody's being held accountable. And then metrics, so the hard and soft metrics that tell us, give us feedback on whether what we're doing is actually going to work. And Forethought actually operates across the whole spectrum of this, but that's not to say that we, look at every CX brief and think about how we can design, a massive program. We often operate just in the insight space as well, if that's what the client wants. But it's useful to know that we have a really strong appreciation for what needs to happen on the other side, because we need to take all that, or we should, as a good agency that's focused on outcomes for you, take all that into account so that we tweak the design and we sort of get the foundation right so that you are set up for success as much as possible on the other side, which is really what happened with Aussie. So speaking of them, this is a quick look at what their program ended up looking like. So I'll start, I'm going to go through stage by stage. And so I'll start you off with their customer discovery. I was just on the phone with Liz and Em right before, and they were saying to me, yeah, Mel, you can say, that qual and quant is really, really essential. And that's basically what they did. They had quite an extensive customer discovery phase, which comprised of very robust qual and then really robust pieces of quant with huge sample sizes and just every objective under the sun. So we had to sort of stage that out into a few phases. But out of those phases came some really key, really critical insight that changed the trajectory of the business, changed minds, busted myths, and really were quite fundamental to changing, what the strategy had been initially heading towards. So, for example, this is a slide from their qual. I've had to redact quite a bit, but for those of you that are familiar with journey maps, we created a little bit of a journey map for them. This is a very high level view. There's very detailed maps that sit under every phase of this. But from the initial qual, even just from the initial qual, we found significant opportunity in the market that no one was actually capitalizing on. The current state experience, no matter who you use, whether it was Aussie, whether it was competitor, whether it was direct, it was complicated, it was riddled with pain points. Nobody talks about the home buying experience as something that they loved. Really nobody, not even first home buyers, definitely not investors, definitely not, no matter who you are in the market. It was just a painful experience. It is just a painful experience. There are a range of buyer types, ranges of influences, ranges of mindsets. So significant opportunity for actually targeting and matching your offer to these different cohorts if you know who they are and if you know what they're wanting, which we obviously told them. The purchase funnel was really atypical. Those of you who are familiar with funnel marketing, so awareness, consideration, purchase, not typical at all, which was a really key insight, which then helped inform their marketing strategy. And as a category, it wasn't really positioning itself in the right way. So this is not specific to Aussie, but it's about broking as a category. As it's a little bit incredible that as an entire category, they had not really grasped their true value proposition yet. And there was a lot of mediocre positioning and advertising out there that really wasn't doing Aussie any favors. But as the category captain, they were well positioned to actually change some of this. So really, a hugely valuable qual phase, which, yeah, we did some amazing qual there that gave us some of those great anecdotes that you heard from Liz and Em. The guy taking his top off and running around the room, I will literally never forget that. I've never seen that happen ever before. So really, really good qual, which then obviously funneled into and set up our quant. And so you guys have already seen this if you've seen Liz and Em's presentation. In amongst this mess of an experience, Aussie, we weren't making it significantly easier or more enjoyable than any of our competitors were. So just to recap, somewhere in this mess of lines is Aussie and how they were performing across every phase of the experience. And, you can see that everybody is pretty much on top of each other. Nobody is delivering a really differentiated experience or distinctive or better. Everybody's in amongst each other, including the direct channel, which is, if you're not doing any better than doing it myself, then really we're not doing a good job. And then emotionally as well, we're not hitting the highs of pride, and we're not neutralizing anxiety as well as we should be. So that was a really key finding. Not always easy to deliver that kind of finding, especially when you have brokers who are really, really passionate about the customer and feel that they're doing the right thing every day and trying their best mostly to hear that kind of feedback. But, that's what it was. And then the other key thing was that we managed to create models for them of customer behavior, which really provided a prioritization framework for the business, which I think Liz and Em spoke about. Now, this is all redacted and these numbers are all made up because I can't reveal too much about what their insights actually were. But you would have already seen, a really killer insight that we found was that experience drives 72% of new business. So you really cannot ignore it. And you really can't brush it off. There are parts of the experience which you can see illustrated on the left here. These are impacts, and it tells you along the journey what parts of the journey are the most impactful in terms of driving the outcome that you want. So this is all illustrative, and you'll see that some phases don't have an impact, which means that they currently just don't load in as being that important. They're not as important as phase E or phase H. And a really interesting observation just from me is to deliver this message to the business was a little bit scary, because the immediate reaction was, what do you mean these parts are more important and the other parts are not important? Like, the other parts are the parts that we put all our effort and investment and focus into. And, obviously this is all based on really robust analytics, large sample sizes. We designed that from the outset. Obviously we double checked and triple checked, but yes, sorry, it's not that important. Customers, they just want to nail these parts of the journey, and if we nail that, they will come back. Everything else is noise. So that's really the power of modeling, is in that it gives you a prioritization framework that you can really, once you get your head around it and once you buy into it, you really can't argue with the fact that this is what drives the outcome, and the outcome drives 72% of new business. So there were multiple opportunities that we discovered here, not just to improve, but also, not just to improve the current state experience, but also to innovate and evolve for the future. So at Aussie, we, do a strat plan for 3 years. So whatever we design today has to be sort of future-proof for 3 years' time. So the other benefit of the modeling that we did is that it was based on customer needs. jobs to be done, which are sort of everlasting. I think a weakness with a lot of today's customer sat pieces is that you're just measuring drivers of what happens today. And so you can try to improve on, things like really, really tactical things, but then you hit a limit, and then all you've done is sort of really optimized your current state experience, but you haven't actually innovated. So that we wrapped all that thinking up into the Aussie model, and I think it worked out well for them. So that was just a little snippet of the discovery phase. It was weeks of research, sort of all wrapped up into 3 slides. But now I'll talk about the organizational discovery and the methodology we use there. So in terms of organizational discovery, i.e. figuring out what we do inside our 4 walls to create the customer experience that we just saw, a service blueprint unpacks the people, processes, systems, touch points that come together behind the scenes to expose how the organization is currently delivering experiences. So blueprinting is a methodology. I'm sure many of you have actually seen it or been part of it or done it or maybe facilitated it yourselves. We conducted blueprinting workshops with state teams, so literally on the road for 6 weeks, just doing workshops in all their different state offices. We did workshops, interviews, and observations in the contact center at head office. We sort of basically lived there for 6 weeks. So we did a whole bunch of stakeholder interviews across the majority of all their functional areas. And the great thing actually about living there and sort of having lunch with everybody and sort of just hanging out in their kitchen is you get all these informal conversations. So after a formal interview, they might come to you and say, hey, I've been thinking more about that, and actually, this or that. Or you might hear something from someone that changes a line of questioning that you should have asked somebody else. And so you can sort of just go up to their desk and say, hey, I heard that this is a process that goes on. Is that true? And they say, yeah, look at this. And they show it to you on their computer. And so it's just a whole load of discovery that happens in an informal and formal way as part of the engagement that we did for Aussie. And in terms of, if it helps you to understand what we were doing further, in terms of the organization and the organizational hierarchy, this stage is really about engagement from the front line up. So we didn't talk to exec necessarily yet. We did all the field work and discovery and investigation amongst the front line, amongst brokers, amongst the contact center, amongst managers and management to really formulate an independent third-party view before then distilling that up. And when I say distill, it was an incredible amount of distillation. I think we must have gone through hundreds and thousands of packets of Post-its doing these blueprinting workshops in every state amongst several brokers who all have different processes because they're all independent operators. So that was exciting, fun, yet stressful times. But from Post-it C, we distilled it into a service blueprint, which is what you're looking at right now. So service blueprint, it's just basically an evolution of a customer journey map. So the top layer here, the top swim lane, is the customer journey, and you can sort of see how it's laid out. You've got all the different steps, and then under every step or phase, we've got cards, and the cards, stand for different things. They can be touch points, they can be experiences, they can be moments of truth, moments of pain. And then we've also got boxes for evidence, because survey data alone is great, but it's made even stronger and more compelling if they line up with organizational data. And so we had a project manager at Aussie who was helping us extract all that data, and it does all line up. And so we just put it into an insights stack for Aussie. So that's the customer journey up there. And then the bottom 2 swim lanes are really what the service blueprint, the value that it brings. So you've got the contact center journey, and then you've got the broker journey. So the point that I'll make here is it's really, really different from process mapping. We're not interested in understanding, the process that you do, if this, then that, then this, then do this protocol, then press this button. That's not really what this is about. We only care about what you do and what the systems and touch points and people and policies are as they relate to the customer journey. We only care about what you do, the parts that directly underpin a moment of truth for the customer, because everything else is fine, but it's noise. We need to know if we're going to address that moment for customers, we need to then drill down and go, what is happening in the contact center? What is happening on the front line with brokers that is actually directly influencing this? So you can see how it starts to get very, very focused when you have it laid out like this. This is only a snippet. It was actually a 6-meter long document. Some of you who have journey maps all over your walls probably just are cringing at that. But I'm probably biased, but I will say that I think ours is the best because it folds in all the evidence that we have. This is not just a qualitative journey map. It also has the quantification on there. It's got what phase is most impactful for your outcome. It's got performance scores. It's got business evidence on it. And then it's got, you know, the contact center and the broker layers that really enable you. So at a glance, you can easily zoom into the part of the journey that's most important, the key pain points for customers, why, exactly why, from the name of the process and the name of the people who are sort of contributing to that process, you know, how are we actually going to fix that if we decide to fix that? And what will our ROI then be? So doing this was actually a really great experience as well. Liz and Em wanted me to mention that there was a question that came up initially in the first session about, was it difficult to bring franchise owners or the different individual brokers on the journey? Service blueprinting really helps with a lot of that because we had to engage with them to create this. This was co-created with our heaps of post-its, and we literally had we recruited brokers in every state. We made sure that we had some who were really keen to be involved and some who kind of weren't as well, because you need the different views. Got them into a room, got them to post it out, everything that they do underneath the customer journey. And, you know, they are actually, brokers run their own business. So they are the ultimate people with skin in the game. They may be process focused, or they may be sort of not always thinking about the customer, but subconsciously they always are. We did not get a single piece of pushback in terms of the customer journey that we mapped out. All we had was shock. Is this what they go through? What broker was servicing them? They really shouldn't. No. Guys, this is wrong. This should not be the customer journey. The customer journey should be this. And they started to rearrange our journey and then sort of put out what their process was that they had actually optimized within their little patch, you know, and they started teaching us what should be done. And so I think for Aussie, this was just a way to collect all those individual, fragmented, different processes, put them all in one place, get a sense of what the common threads were in terms of the pain points, and then, you know, be able to go back to brokers and say, we heard you, we heard all of you, and this is what we're now going to do. It really wasn't difficult because we had gone through all the process of co-creating this with them along the way. So in terms of then achieving organizational alignment, so now we had this insights stack, and we got it from really engaging very deeply with the grassroots of the organization. We put quant all over it as well, and it all converged into just a handful of opportunities. So then we socialized this in key decision-making forums at various levels. So we attended many offsites, many internal team workshops, and we even spoke to agency partners. And that's really how we then filled in the rest of that pyramid. So we spoke to exec and also then helped to brief every agency partner or every partner that touched the relevant parts of the journey. And actually we got amazing feedback from them as well on the blueprint, because agencies have seen lots of different kinds of journey maps or customer research, and for them this was just very clear in terms of what part of the journey is most important. What is the pain point? Is it the software that I'm providing? Is it the support that I'm not doing right? Is it the learning and development that I'm not doing right? Is it, what is it? What's my role in that? And therefore, what can I do? So that was a nice bonus of being on site and just having FaceTime with some of their partners as well. So then from the discovery phase, we move into the prioritization, defining what we're going to do. What gaps are we actually going to address out of everything that we've seen? And who needs to give up their babies so that we can do this? This is just a photo of the full day workshop that we had. Again, it was, quite a significant affair. We had people, representation from every state. We had brokers in it. We had head office in it. And we facilitated them through a process of creating their future state. This then translated into an action plan. So again, can't really talk too much about it, and a lot of it's redacted, but we have, the output of that is clear work streams and initiatives, a new target state customer experience and broker experience. And it's all anchored to the customer journey and the evidence stack that constantly reminds us why we're doing it, what the payback is going to be, and it's all on the page. So it was nice and neat. So in terms of results, Aussie has already covered that, so I won't go over that again. And hopefully, just lastly, in terms of takeouts, hopefully I've just given you a good framework to help think about some of this stuff. It's not just about listening to the customer, but listening properly is really critical. There are a few questions to ask yourself if you've got the right foundation. And then once we have the right foundation, we still need to know what we're going to do to bridge the difference and create the right conditions to ensure we stick to the plan. So I think I've not left myself a heap of time for questions, but I will see if I can answer one. Sorry, I'm just reading through all of this. And the box is really small, so I'm going to just hit on a different page. How engaged were executive leadership in the process, and how critical was that for gaining traction? I would say extremely critical. They were engaged in the sense, as with every initiative that happens internally, you sort of get an executive sponsor of it, and they sort of buy into why we're doing it, and then they sort of, fade into the background while the work actually gets done. I would say on the other side of it, all of those offsites, all of those workshops that we then had with them, they were extremely engaged in the research. They really wanted to wrap their hands around it and understand it, because it was such a robust program that you just really couldn't argue with it. So once they wrapped their heads around it, then they really got into solutions mode. And you need it to happen at the exec level, because as I mentioned, someone needs to give up or compromise and get their card moved somewhere else in the roadmap to make room for the other thing to come forward. So it was absolutely critical. Couldn't have done it without it. So I've got 9 seconds. So sorry, I will address most of your questions after this as well, but thank you so much for joining today, and see you all later.